day. Welcome back to the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy e-learning program. I am Ms. Jamila Amin Bacchus, your facilitator for CAPE Biology. In plants and in animals, we have anaerobic respiration taking place. And here we can see a common process of glycolysis occurring, whether it's aerobic or anaerobic respiration. Remember, you have one glucose molecule we're looking at being used, and we are producing 2 3-carbon molecules. And for each 3 carbon molecules, we are going to be producing 2 moles of ATP, right? So in fact, we produce 4 moles of ATP, but since we invested 2 moles at the beginning, the net product from any breakdown of 1 glucose will be 2 moles of ATP. So this can happen whether it is in an animal or it is in a plant. But in addition, what we have will be NADH being produced. Remember, we started with NAD, and what NAD did, it was able to pick up hydrogen and become reduced. Remember, when a hydrogen is added, the molecule becomes reduced, and when it gives it up, it becomes oxidized. So NAD would have picked up the hydrogen from glycolysis and become reduced. NADH, you say NADH or reduced NAD. And now that this process is here, so this NAD is locked up. This cannot go back and pick up any more from glycolysis. So if this should stay like that, then this process will halt because you would not have enough NAD to continue to accept the hydrogen and the electrons. What then happens is that the product pyruvate, this 3-carbon molecule, is now able to take the hydrogen. So you see it's linking here. You do not have any oxygen present, so it does not go into the mitochondria. But you're going to produce, in this case, in the plants, you're going to have ethanol. It will accept the hydrogen and become ethanol. Remember, first, pyruvate loses 1 carbon in the form of carbon dioxide, and then it accepts the hydrogen and becomes reduced, and then you produce ethanol. Likewise, in animals, a similar thing happens, except you do not have any carbon dioxide being lost. So you would not see any gas in your muscles and so on as you respire, carry out anaerobic respiration. What you simply have is the pyruvate molecule that in itself become reduced when it accepts the it accepts the hydrogen from NADH, and it becomes lactate or lactic acid, which is a 3-carbon. So you notice this remains a 3-carbon molecule. There's no carbon loss. Whereas here, ethanol is a 2-carbon molecule because one of the carbon is going into carbon dioxide. Good? As I said, a lot of confusion some people have whether it's lactic or lactic acid. You may have observed that the both terms are used interchangeably as if they were the same thing. However, the minor differences between them, they're important in discussing how they play a role in metabolism. The major difference between lactate and lactic acid is 1 proton in the molecule, right? All acids have a positive charge, indicating that it is a hydrogen ion donor. The conjugate base is lactate, right, which has a negative charge. So lactic acid is not something your body produces or removes from your muscles. Instead, lactate is what you should use as to explain the product that is being formed. It is lactate. Now, what happens to this lactate? We'll see in a little bit. So, here we are seeing biotechnology. Again, we are explaining that we can use the knowledge of science to actually produce things that we can enjoy or make money off of, right? And so wine making, bread making, cheese making, and many other processes are using the knowledge that we have about anaerobic respiration to have industries, that huge, industries where a number of people are being employed, a number of persons get enjoyment, most functions and so on may have some kind of alcoholic beverage and so on. So it is a vast industry has developed surrounding anaerobic respiration. Oxygen depth. Now, as I said, in animals, we produce lactate. And that burning sensation that we have, it has to go away. What then happens? What happens after the guy finishes the 400 meters race, or the girl? You will see them breathing deeply. What they have to do is to get oxygen to break down that lactate. Now, once oxygen is available, lactate will now revert back into pyruvate and get back into the scheme to get into the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. And the oxygen, which we know is the final electron acceptor, will now be able to end the process, and we will get the 38 moles of ATP from that process. So once you produce lactate, your body can actually break it down and get energy from that glucose that you got. That happens in animal cells. So when you are breathing in and you're taking your deep breaths and so on, that is what we call the oxygen depth. The oxygen literally that was owed to the process to break down the lactate. So this is the extra amount of oxygen needed by the body in order to reestablish the pre-exercise metabolic state. So we are trying to ensure that our body get back to the state where it was having sufficient oxygen to carry out respiration for all our cells to remain alive. While you are sitting here now, you are carrying out respiration. I know I want to dispel a little inaccuracies that sometimes I encounter far too often. When you ask persons, what is respiration? They'll tell you breathing in and breathing out. Now, in some quarters, that is called external respiration. I choose not to use the word at all, to be honest with you, because it is so confusing to persons, because you are hearing me speak about respiration, and you may say, but miss, I thought respiration is breathing in and breathing out. Well, the respiration we speak of happens in every single cell, every single living cell, right? Even you may have something, an onion there. Won't you see after a while you have it in a bag, the bag gets wet? You may have some potato there or something. All of those things are respiring. Your peas, your pigeon peas and so on you have in your bag, you will notice it's sweating. It's respiring. And one of the products of respiration, as we noticed on the last occasion we did aerobic respiration, is that we will produce water. The final product of aerobic respiration is water. So all living cells carry out respiration. You may ask, well, miss, why do we breathe, or why do they talk about breathing? Well, inhalation and exhalation ensures that our body can take in gases, which includes a lot of oxygen, and let out gases that includes a lot of carbon dioxide. We're not going down that road to explain that. That should have been done in Form 5 level, or you can simply pick up a book and read about it. But I just wanted to dispel that myth that respiration is just breathing in and breathing out. Your cells in your lungs carry out respiration, yes, but your cells in your toe, your cells in your hand, your cells in your eye, your cells in your hair are all carrying out respiration. Respiration is a process which takes place in every living cell. So we speak to cellular respiration. That is what we're speaking about. In every cell you have respiration. Remember, respiration is one of the characteristics of all living things. Remember that Grimner thing you would have learned very earlier? Characteristics of living thing, respiration is one of those characteristics. So we have some questions here. I left the questions to last because I did not give you a peek at it because they're too easy. So I think you should be able to just look at it, and based on what we said earlier, you should be able to answer it. And they are multiple choice type questions. During anaerobic respiration in mammals, the pair of hydrogen atoms released during glycolysis are accepted by NAD. To which molecules are the pairs of hydrogen atoms then transferred? If you get a question like this in the exam room, what do? Well, the first thing I will tell you to do is read it again. Any question you get, make sure you understand the question before you attempt to answer it. Even though it looked like something you saw before, many students make that mistake, and sometimes you can simply have a change in the word, and you may just put in not in that sentence, and it completely throws you off. So ensure you read, and as I did, underline the key words or phrases that you will want to put focus on. Even when you're doing your structured and your essay questions, a similar thing you can do. So you read the question again. During anaerobic respiration, so you specify anaerobic respiration in mammals, the pair of hydrogen atoms released during glycolysis are accepted by NAD. To which molecule are the pairs of hydrogen atoms then transferred? Remember, NAD accepts the hydrogen atoms in the last stage of glycolysis, but then in animals, that is passed on to pyruvate to eventually form lactate. So the answer is D, pyruvate. Did you get that? Yes, you should. Good. Next one. Which statement about anaerobic respiration is correct? Which statement about anaerobic respiration is correct? Now, we are doing a topic here on anaerobic respiration, so of course you know it's anaerobic respiration. But if you had this question between a lot of the other questions, if you read through and you didn't take your time, you may in fact think it's aerobic respiration. So that's what I said, make sure that you read your questions and read it again. I even tell my students, look, read it 3 times, just to be sure, because it's better you read it and you're sure. You have 2 minutes to do a question here. You have 1.5 hours to do 45 questions, right? So you really have a lot of time to work with. So read through your questions, reread it, ensure that you know exactly what is being asked, and then read through each answer again carefully. So here you have the answers. Animals are unable to use lactate for the production of ATP. So which statement about anaerobic respiration is correct? Which is correct? Animals are unable to use lactic for the production of ATP. B, from one molecule of glucose, ethanol and lactate production yield the same amount of ATP. C, from one molecule of glucose, ethanol production yields more energy than lactate production. And D, yeast is able to respire ethanol for the production of ATP. Again, when you examine these questions, again, go over it again, but you will notice that the correct answer here is B. From one molecule of glucose, ethanol and lactate production yields the same amount of ATP. From one glucose, both of them will yield 2 molecules of ATP. One more question. This one, I hope you've seen it clearly. It's a bit dark. The diagram shows the reversible conversion of pyruvate to lactate by the enzyme lactate dehydrogenase. Okay? And they're showing you this process. This is pyruvate. Remember, pyruvate has 1, 2, 3 carbons in it. And to lactate, remember there's no carbon dioxide loss, so lactate also has 3 carbons in its structure. And they say, what would be the effect of inhibition? We know inhibition is something that will block or prevent the activity from taking place, would be the inhibition of lactate dehydrogenase in a mammalian cell under anaerobic condition. What will be the effect if you block lactate dehydrogenase, which is the enzyme which is acting on the pyruvate to form lactate? What will be the effect under anaerobic conditions? A decrease in cell pH, the first answer, due to the accumulation of lactic acid. Good. We know we will have a decrease in cell pH if we have an accumulation of lactic acid. A decrease, but that is if we are going to have lactic acid. If we block lactate dehydrogenase from occurring, will we have an increase in lactic acid? B, a decrease in glycolysis due to the lack of NAD. A decrease in glycolysis due to the lack of NAD. C, an increase in ATP production due to increased amounts of reduced NAD. An increase in ATP production due to increased amounts of reduced NAD. And D, an increase in activity of the Krebs cycle due to increased amounts of pyruvate. Now, whenever we are looking at a question such as this, or any multiple choice question, there are certain things you look for. One, you look for the answers that are way out. And as we can see, this one, which includes the Krebs cycle, is way out because the Krebs cycle is not involved in anaerobic respiration. Secondly, which one, again, would we be able to take out? If we look at the equation, we are saying, and it's saying that the reversible conversion of pyruvate to lactate. So from pyruvate to lactate, this is the one we're looking at, the one that is going in this direction. And we're seeing here, reduced NAD is going to become NAD, right? So it is accepting the NADH, is accepting the hydrogen from this molecule to become this. So if this process cannot take place, then we are not going to be producing NAD. Good? Because if something blocks this process, we will only have NADH, which is reduced NAD, and so we will not have the buildup of NADH. We certainly will not have A. So A is another one that is out. Because if we cannot produce lactate, then we will not have a decrease in the pH. Remember, a decrease in the pH meaning that it is going lower in more acidic. So if we do not have lactic acid, we will not have a decrease in the pH. When we look between B and C, for C, an increase in ATP production. Will we get ATP production if you cannot have the NAD being formed to be able to go back into glycolysis to continue to reduce the molecule? All right? If we do not have that occurring to continue to be reduced, we will not have, if we do not have this process occurring, then C will not take place. And so when we look at B, a decrease in glycolysis due to the lack of NAD. And so the answer is B. Good? So as we go into our exams, note you have to have a method in answering your questions. Firstly, read your statements and so on properly. Ensure that you look and you examine what is being asked. Make sure you examine every single answer, because we know the answers may be loaded. If a question has a lot of information and you cannot process it all at once, my suggestion is that you just put a little asterisk next to it, and on the answer sheet, a little dot or something away from where the actual shading area is, and go back to it when you have moved through. But do not rush yourself to answer a question and you're not sure. Don't play the guessing game. You have invested too much for a year, more or less, to be guessing. Sit down and think it through. And by all means, do not have any question being sent back in blank. Do not have anything being blank. Try your best. You have the answers within you. Try and figure it out. It's all about application of knowledge. So we would have gone through our specific objectives. And so at the end of this lesson, I am certain that you can recall the locations and the metabolic reactions involved in the process of anaerobic respiration. You can compare the fate of pyruvate in the absence of oxygen in animals and yeast, and I dare say in plants. Illustrate how fermentation allows for the regeneration of NAD. We would have looked at that, what happens in plants and what happens in animals, and the importance of this in ensuring that the process of glycolysis continues. Explain the concept of oxygen depth in mammals. The fact that we need to get that oxygen to break down the lactic, and note that lactate can also be broken down in your liver to form glucose and also to be stored as glycogen and even fat. Good? So if you have a buildup in lactate in the blood, the liver can actually break down lactate. We also wanted to, I think the last one, cite commercial uses of yeast. So we saw so many areas where you have biotechnology. And if you just look around, you will see so many areas. You know, you have a lot of people are doing a lot of fermentation. I was hearing a lot of people doing fermentation for the recent outbreak we had there. People were doing their little stuff. So a lot of activities you can carry out, you can do, and commercial activities you can do to take part in to involve anaerobic respiration. Appreciate the importance of anaerobic respiration to living organisms. As I said, it keeps us going, it keeps us alive. Some organisms purely live on anaerobic respiration. There are what you call anaerobes, which live, as I said, in areas where it is very murky, you do not have a lot of oxygen, and these organisms live. There are some organisms, like in the mangroves and so on, that can switch from being aerobes to anaerobes. And so they can survive in various environmental conditions. And that's important for their survival. Of course, their activities would be a lot slower than normally they would be if they were aerobes. And answer CXC CAPE type questions. Remember again, this was a review. It should not have been the first time you were encountering this. This was an activity, a topic you should have covered in Module 1 of your course. And it's simply looking again at the way in which energy, bioenergetics, the way in which energy can be utilized. Remember, energy captured, passes through the ecosystem, passes from one organism to the other, and eventually, through respiration, that energy can be lost as heat. Good? I am Ms. Jamila Amin-Bacchus. I'm very pleased to have carried you through this course. And as we continue on, I will be looking at some other topics, some other areas that you may just need to look at another time. And I'm sure that you will be very prepared going into that exam room. Take time to go over some of the videos when you have some time, or go back over your books and just take another look at that topic that you thought was so difficult. You'll realize it's not as difficult as you think. Thank you very much. This is Ms. Jamila Amin-Bacchus from the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy, and I would dare say from lovely Tobago. Have a beautiful day. Bye.